here in downtown Detroit at the Madison Building with Drew Patrick, CEO and owner of the iconic Skidmore studio. I think this is your 60th year in business.
It is, yeah.
You don't look nearly 60 years old.
I've aged very well over the years. Yeah, no, 60-year anniversary.
Congratulations to the studio. Is that what you call it, the studio?
Call it the studio, for sure.
And not being from the marketing world, what does it mean to call a marketing type company a studio?
Yeah, it's very intentional, has been for a while. We do not want to call ourselves an agency. And that historically, agencies are sort of put into a bucket that we don't want to be put into, right? And really it's the connotation that an agency is an agent of others or for others, and that tends to bleed into, the use of other talent rather than internal talent. And our history has been about making and doing things here with a small group of people ourselves. So we use that studio terminology because we think it's a better reflection of that reality here.
And when you say your history has been, meaning dating all the way back to the beginning in 1959?
Yeah. Well, obviously I wasn't here in 1959. But
really?
What I know and there's been many evolutions of the studio. Okay, so if you can see some of the artwork behind you, we started out as an illustration shop. So it was an illustration studio to begin with. And that is a very small part of what we do now.
Yeah.
We've really evolved a couple times. And you think back, 1959, illustration shop, 100% of the work we were doing was servicing the big ad agencies in town. And our founder, Leo Skidmore, just wanted to split off from where he was at. And there's some common thread between why he started and where we're at today. But the work that we do has really evolved and changed. And now, a couple steps later, we're a branding studio for companies that are in the business of food and fun.
Food and fun.
So from automotive illustration to branding for food and fun, an obvious transition, or not so obvious, but that's where we're at today.
I love it. And we were walking around the studio prior to sitting down in here, and I want to learn more about some of the work that you're doing and your journey, which is an amazing story, and in part why we're sitting here, and the other part is just because you're a good friend and I really enjoy your company, so any excuse to get sitting down with you is a good one. But you alluded to it just a few minutes ago before we got started. My first question, the real first question, I like to ask, is how do you start off your morning? And I start off my morning and I do nothing, which is my meditation practice. What's your version of do nothing in the morning?
Yeah. Well, I do nothing and then I don't eat breakfast normally, which is what touched on a little earlier. And my morning routine is something that this year, actually, I've decided I want to adjust.
Okay.
And I'm doing it slowly, right? I'm on a couple-year journey of trying to be a more mindful leader, right? And I know morning routine is important to that. For some reason, I struggle with changing my routine. So my routine from the history of when I started working was wake up, shower, go to work. That's it, right? Like as soon as I could get out the door, I'm out the door. And it was very rushed and aggressive and just that kind of type A. I'm going to get things done and be the first one in the door. And I've changed the mentality around it, but the actual things that happen haven't changed that much.
Meaning you still get up and take a shower?
I still get up. But now I actually intentionally lie in bed in silence and just do some deep breathing for about 10 minutes. Oh, wow. And that is preparing to get up rather than jumping up and rushing into the routine. So that is one small tweak I've made. And it may evolve more into something else, but for right now, that's where I'm at. And I also changed my wake-up time. Like starting in January 1, the New Year's resolution. I used to wake up at about 6:30, 6:45, and I changed it to 6. I just thought, if I wake up at 6, something good will happen. And there was no intention other than wake up a little earlier. I don't know that anything good has happened yet, but I'm hopeful.
These things take
I'm
time.
optimistic.
These things take time. That extra half hour, 45 minutes multiplied by however many days.
Yeah.
Where did you learn the breathing technique from when you lie in bed?
Well, it's just from general, a little bit of study of meditation,
Okay.
obviously. You may have played a role in some of that. So I attended the Do Nothing retreat last year, which was really my dive into meditation. I had dabbled a bit before that. One of the people on my team here is big into meditation and did a little workshop for the staff.
Oh, cool.
Maybe a year and a half ago, and that was really a first intro for me into meditation. And so then just a little bit of self-study in that. And for me, it was really I do this in the morning before I get up. And I also do it throughout the day periodically, just as I feel my mind start to get a little full. I'll stop at my desk for 2 minutes. And 2 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but 2 minutes can be just a good, really quick clarity break.
Yeah.
And for me, that seems to be pretty helpful.
That's an amazing practice. For more people to do that, and just it does, like you say, 2 minutes. It sounds like, what's that going to do? But just stopping actually is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Stopping the momentum of your brain and all your thoughts.
And man, I think it's like, I use these words, transformational, I don't know what it is, but it's such a difference in mentality from earlier in my career to now. Just the permission, like giving yourself permission to slow down for me has been really impactful.
Yeah.
And that probably, spreads into other areas of my life and of the business and with the team, but it's just, not just during the day, but the practice of before we go into a meeting, and I've tried to instill this in the rest of the team. Any meeting you go into, internal or external, take 30 seconds or a minute, breathe, and then consider, why are we doing this? Why are we having this meeting? What am I looking to get out of it? And what do I think others are looking to get out of it? And it's just, I think that 1 minute prep is something that in my previous experience in the corporate world or even in the small business world really was absent.
Yeah. And how is that being received by the team?
Oh, I think everybody's really open to it and appreciates that we're not meeting for no reason. Because it will prompt a conversation too, to say, why are we meeting? What is this about again? And really what it does, one of the great effects is it puts everybody on the same page at the beginning of a meeting. Right.
That's so true. I read somewhere, I might not have this completely right, but that you've struggled, in a sense, being present, fully present, and it's something you're really working on to be more present as a leader, or maybe even as a person. Did I read that right? And what do you say about that?
Yeah.
Where are you right now with that?
You did read that right. I don't know where it's written, but I know that it's written somewhere.
Staff.
Somebody asked me. Yeah. That research team that you've got.
I actually do have one.
Yeah.
Mei Cheng.
Yeah. There you
Shout
go.
out.
Shout out. I used to be a guy who had his phone out on the table during a meeting.
Okay.
And, just that, whether it's subconscious or conscious thought of like, no, there might be something really important that comes up. And I, as leader, need to be available to that other unknown thing. That was a mentality. And I don't want to say it was right or wrong, or that was a mentality I had before with good intention, but realizing it's destructive now. That not being wholly present with the people that I'm with shows and is going to have some repercussions that I wasn't considering before. So now, not having a laptop in a meeting, not having a phone in a meeting, and for me a big one was just eye contact too. I find myself in many meetings just kind of looking away. And now I try to be more wholly present.
Yeah. Do you bring a journal in now to take notes instead of your laptop?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've got notebooks that
Was
I'm
that an
filling up.
adjustment for you then?
I've always had the notebook,
Okay.
but I usually had the notebook and a laptop open,
Okay.
and that I
And
just
that-
found I don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Are electronics or devices discouraged in the meetings, or are they? Or do you allow? Do you have kind of a rule about it, or?
We're not that big on rules here as a creative studio.
Okay, let me rephrase it. A unwritten
People are encouraged.
way of being. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
We've definitely strongly encouraged people. I laugh. We've had meetings before Lauren, our operations director, comes to it and says, everybody, this meeting is kind of mandatory, so we're hoping you can make it. It's like, what's kind of mandatory mean? But that's what we do around here. I don't want to be too dogmatic about anything. But yeah, we've encouraged people, and we've had the conversations about being present with each other and the level of respect that shows
Yeah.
to each other and for each other. And I guess the unspoken part there is the level of disrespect it shows when you're not wholly present with people. And it's not it's not malicious. I know it's not malicious, but it still says something when you're on your device.
Yeah.
And when other people are trying to communicate effectively with each other. So we've had conversations with the team about putting devices away. And we have framed it around monotasking. Now at the beginning of my career, everybody talked about multitasking and the value of multitasking.
Yeah.
And we did this awesome exercise with the team. And simple thing, right? Take a sheet of paper, and you pick it can be a 15 letter or 20 letter sentence. And you ask everybody to write that sentence. You don't tell them what it is, but as soon as you're going to start the clock, you say, okay, write this out. And we'd use I love Skidmore Studio. And I want you to write out I love Skidmore Studio and then write out the numbers 1 to 20 or however many letters it is in order. Ready, go. And you time it, and it takes people 10 seconds. And then you go, okay, now this time around, do the same thing, but just rotate. I1, L2, O3. Same number of strokes of your pen, same number of space. On average, it takes about 3 times as long.
That's great.
And so that was just the demonstration of multitasking,
I
trying
love
to do
that
two things at
exercise.
once. Because your brain has to switch between two activities rather than just straight line one.
Where do you think, these kinds of conversations, while maybe the norm in a company like yours, what do you notice out in the business world in general? And you're involved, in both nonprofit and very involved in other profit companies in terms of knowing how they operate, whether they be clients or peers or whatever. What are you noticing as it relates to this type of culture that you're building here?
Yeah. It's interesting. Everybody talks about culture ad nauseum now, right? And there's a lot of, I think, corporate speak around it. But what we still see in it can be clients, partners, and even previous experiences, there just oftentimes is what we perceive to be this unnecessary rush and pressure around whether it's framed as productivity or efficiency. I think our difference here is that while we want to be efficient and we are diligent about being as absolutely effective as we can be for our clients, we give our people freedom, right? We want the team to decide on their own what they should be working on when, how long it should take, shouldn't take, where they work from, and whether that's where they work from here, at their desk, at an open space, community space, down in the coffee shop, or work from home. There's just a lot more freedom here. And I think even when in the corporate world, everybody's talking about that, we don't see the reality of it. So I think there's a desire there in the greater corporate world to, everybody talks about how do we attract a millennial audience? How do we attract the younger workforce? We're having trouble hiring. And it's, I think it's because we see a disconnect between what's being said and what reality actually is. We actually are really trying to live a culture of freedom, personal accountability, flexibility, and things are definitely trending that way. I think it's hard to actually do that in a larger organization.
That's true. Do you find that the millennial workforce that you have are more receptive to putting away devices, or are they more attached to them?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for all of us. I mean, I'm technically not a millennial. I think I'm just outside of the ranges. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it.
Aren't you turning 40 this year, or did you already turn 40?
Thanks for bringing it up.
I had to.
I'm 6 weeks away,
It's
man.
a big number.
40. I'm
The
pumped
big
about it.
40.
Yeah. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, I think you're going to be okay. I'm not worried about it.
I still feel like I'm 18. I
You
don't
look
know.
like you're 18.
I got a beard.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the
Come
only
on.
thing.
I look old.
Yeah, right.
Sophisticated.
Yeah.
No. Our team here is pretty good. We don't have problems with that. I mean, we had a couple discussions, like I said, mentioned earlier. We had a couple discussions about devices in meetings, but it really wasn't about anything personal being done. I believe wholeheartedly that it was people trying to accomplish 2 work tasks at once. So we haven't run into that issue of people are on Facebook all day or on Instagram all day. We don't see that. I'd like to believe because it's something we're doing. I don't know. Maybe it's we're hiring mature people. Maybe it's we're providing a level of freedom and flexibility that is reciprocated with respect.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's not an issue here. Hasn't been.
When you were talking about how from early on your schedule in the morning would be you just wake up, take a shower, and get out the door, and I can relate to that. And when you were talking about that, I was thinking about where we got our habits from. And, like when it's time to go to work, like how did I know when I was in my early 20s starting my career that I should get up, take a shower, and go to work? Like where did I learn that from? I'm curious where you learned those types of habits from.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's clearly father.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I had a pretty traditional home.
Okay.
Both my parents were, my parents stayed married. Good, typical suburban American family that, dad worked, he was the provider, mom stayed at home, and that's what dad did every morning. He got up, he ate breakfast, for sure. He did not skip a meal. But he got up and he went to work, and that was what dad did. And so I think, that was what was modeled for me, and what I adopted on my own. I just like to sleep too. I just like being in bed. So it's when I get out of bed, it's like, I guess it's time to go.
It's time to
run.
get going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In school, when I was younger, in middle school, high school, college, I'd stay in bed till the last minute. I had to, and then it was rush, shower, get out the door.
Yeah,
so I think maybe it was more of that. Maybe it was my own, procrastination of getting out of bed.
It's interesting you say that because you say you moved your wake-up time to 6 from 6:30, 6:45, and it's almost like that wiring in your brain is you really love to be in bed as long as you can be in bed.
Yeah.
It's like you love it.
I know,
You're going to push it to the wire.
It's comfy. It's cozy.
Well, hey, bed's
right?
great.
Yeah.
How many hours of sleep do you need?
Depends. You asked me at a strange time because in the last week I have slept a ton, and that's unusual.
Okay.
I normally get, I would say, 7 hours.
Okay.
Right? Which I don't know if that's a lot, a little. Normally 7, but in the last week, I've been going to bed early. I fell asleep on the couch at 7:30 the other day, and woke up at like 6 in the morning.
Wow.
And I think this is stemming from getting back maybe a little residual jet lag.
Yeah, you were out of the country, which I want to talk to you about as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So, but 7 hours seems to be, you
It's about
feel
an hour.
energized or whatnot.
I feel energized so long as I'm taking care of myself in other ways.
Okay.
So
What
I
is that?
found that it's not just the sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
7
What are
hours
the
can
other
feel-
things?
7 hours feels great
Yeah.
if I have exercised recently and eaten healthy.
Uh-huh.
And 7 hours feels like a drag if I was eating garbage and haven't worked out.
Yeah. Do you exercise every day, or do you have a
No.
routine?
Yeah, I think this is the theme here. I don't have a routine necessarily, but it's regular without schedule. So I run, I do yoga. I just got a Peloton, which I'm really pumped about.
The bike Peloton or the run? Okay.
The bike.
Okay.
And I'm active in mountain biking, never really road cycling. Peloton's just fun though.
Is it?
It's competitive.
Uh-huh.
It takes me back to younger days of actually being able to compete in things.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty excited about adding that one into the routine.
That's cool. So in growing up, you say competitive, you played football, right?
Played football and ran track.
And ran track.
Yeah.
You're an excellent runner. I'd forgotten we were talking before, and you qualified for the Boston Marathon twice. You ran it once?
I ran it once.
Yeah, 2012.
2012.
Pretty cool experience.
It was it was a brutal experience, but wonderful nonetheless. I didn't really train a whole lot. Certainly didn't train adequately for the race, but I didn't care because it was Boston and I was just going to do it.
Yeah.
That whole experience, like it's a magical event, right? And that 2012 was the year before the bombing, so there wasn't that stigma to it yet.
Right.
But 2012, it happened to be 92 degrees in the beginning of April at the start of the race. And coming from a Michigan winter and not having trained much, let alone not being ready for heat, by mile 8, I was walking. I'd never walked in a race before, and by mile 8, I was walking.
Yeah, but there's ever a reason to be able to walk, it's when it's 92 degrees.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was there for that year, and I had a minor injury, and I was trying to decide whether or not I should run. And the heat was like the capper, and we ended up going to the Red Sox game, and I just didn't run it, and just cheered everybody on. And so yeah, I remember that year. It was brutal. I was watching everybody, and who knows? I didn't know you then, I don't think, and you probably went right by me, and
You probably
when
cheered
I
for
cheered,
me.
cheered
As long as
you
you
on.
stuck around for a while, because it took me a while.
It took most people a while, from what I could tell. So growing up, you were running track, you were playing football, and you had the all-American family. What did siblings?
Yeah, I have a brother, older brother.
Older brother.
4
How
years.
much? 4 years older. Okay. And the household, like, what were you like in high school? Were you a jock? Were you studious, or what were you?
I would say yes to both of those.
Okay.
I was kind of I was perceived to be the good kid, you know, the good student, good athlete, very involved in activities and the honor society and all that stuff. I was involved in a program of peer mentoring that was like a conflict resolution. So if two kids got in a fight, they had students who would actually sit them down at a table,
Really?
which was really weird, like to think about in high school. Like,
Yeah.
can you actually get high school kids to do this?
Yeah.
And you could.
Interesting.
It was really fascinating. It was kind of my first foray into, you know, human dynamics, like really being thoughtful about the interaction of two individuals. And I wasn't thinking about it in that way at the time. It was just, you know, my track coach said, I think you should do this, so I did it.
Is that how you got involved? Your track coach?
He was,
Oh, wow.
he was one of the faculty advisors to the program.
Okay.
So they were trying to get this thing started, and you know, they've handpicked some students to be the founding sort of participants. And I did it, and yeah, it was a really interesting experience because you could actually get, even in a high school, with students to be vulnerable when you were vulnerable with them and you put them in the right environment, which I didn't think would happen. I mean, you're talking about the kids who were getting into fights were kids who were not open and, you know, necessarily ones who would want to talk, especially with the straight A jock student who was like getting praised all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Would they train you on that? Like,
They did.
how do you? Okay, so
Yeah.
they had a program to train the student facilitators or
It was, I think
conflict
it was
resolvers.
we were called peer mediators.
Peer
Peer mediators.
It's a
Great
name.
title.
Yeah.
And I think it was a national program that our school adopted,
Mm-hmm.
if I can remember correctly. It's been a while. There was a fairly significant training, a few weeks, where we got trained on how to do this. There was a lot of mock sort of sessions, and then there was actual implementation. We actually did it, and I think it was helpful.
To the kids or to you?
Both. I mean, clearly. I think it was actually helpful to the kids. That was the surprising part.
That it actually made an
people-
impact.
Yeah, people actually took it. People would sit back and arms crossed and not want to say anything.
Yeah.
But once you went through the process, it was kind of like marriage counseling, even though two people weren't close. The students talked,
Yeah.
spoke, and they opened up, and kids cried. And it was really kind of fascinating to see to somebody who was really pretty sheltered in their existence. And I had no concept or understanding of what other kids might have been going through at home or in their personal life or in their background.
Yeah.
And then they would start to talk about some of these things. And I knew when two kids got in a fight, it had nothing to do with either one of them not really liking the other one. It had to do with something on their own, internal, or something that was happening at home. And that was, it was really interesting to see at that age.
Such a cool experience to get at that age and to be pulled out by your track coach. What did he or she see in you, do you think, where he thought, was it a he?
He was a he.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did he see in you that where he thought you'd be a good candidate to do this? What was going on that he did that?
I don't know exactly. I think he obviously saw some level of leadership potential. And I felt that from him, just in the way he treated me from freshman year through senior year, 4 years being with him. So I think that was it. I don't know that I was a de facto leader in school and sports because I was a high performer. But I didn't really think about leadership at that point, or how it should be done or what should be done. I was just kind of self-interested and wanted to be a high performer in anything I did. That was what was instilled in me by my parents, and my upbringing was like, be good, get good grades, be a good student. If you're gonna do something, be good at it, or don't do it. So I brought that, and I think he was, he could see that level of desire and probably wanted to put me in positions where I could grow actual skills in that area that I didn't have.
Do you remember his name?
John Bancroft.
John Bancroft.
Yeah.
Have you ever spoken to
Oh,
him?
yeah. I've spoken to him.
Still,
It's
or?
been a few years, but we've stayed in touch. He's a really interesting guy, wonderful human being. Loved to piss people off though. Like he's kind of a love-hate guy. There were
Okay.
most people who ran for him loved him. Super competitive, like old school. He was from rural Michigan, and
Okay.
had a story for everything, and just wonderful guy, right?
Did you feel that way about him at the time as well?
Oh yeah, I loved him.
You
Loved
did.
him at the time. I was his student assistant my senior year, and half the reason for that was because he didn't make me come to class. I could sleep in that hour. I think it was what it was.
That's huge.
Yeah, it was huge. But then he was also a bit of a, you might say an anarchist or just anti-establishment kind of guy. So in the school, he would get in trouble regularly with administration because he taught a class that was, what was it? It was some kind of world history class in high school, but you didn't do anything that had to do with world history. He did not
He
follow
took his own
curriculum.
liberties?
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, you had no idea what was going to happen in the classroom that day. You'd walk in and he would just start talking about a current event or something that he wanted to talk about, and it was fascinating. And it was my first example of somebody, and man, I didn't realize it at the time, but it's really looking back on it, it was really impactful. It was my first example of somebody who was in a position of authority who didn't care about the rules, right? He did what he wanted to do, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't to be rebellious, because he truly believed that what he was doing was more impactful for the people he was doing it with at that time in that moment for that purpose. And he treated his classroom that way. He treated the students that way, and his athletes that way too. So yeah, looking back, that was a great example, because here in my career now, our whole purpose is around not being in the norm.
Yeah, isn't that
and
funny?
being I say anti-establishment, just we talk about breaking down the corporate norms that have existed in the American workplace for so long and that are unhealthy to all the individuals involved. And that was probably a really early inspiration for that I've never realized.
How old do you think he is now?
I would think he's pushing 80. Maybe in his 70s. Yeah.
So he was like...
He's probably 50.
Yeah, okay. And when you see him, what do you... Or talk to him,
Last time I ran into him,
you just ran into him?
I literally ran into him. I was running down the street.
No way.
And he was helping his son. His son had a landscaping business, and the two of them were mowing a lawn in a neighborhood I was running through.
And you saw him randomly?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And I stopped, talked to him, and he's retired since, but just same old guy, just happy and telling stories. And
while you were in high school, was there any part of you that was rebellious?
There was, but it wasn't really known. It wasn't seen. I kept up the persona pretty well. So, we did the things that high school kids do. We went out.
What do high school kids do?
We'd sneak out of the house late at night. Parents never knew. We went out drinking, and just those stupid things that you do when you're young to rebel.
Yeah.
Stupid, unhealthy things.
So you did get that out of your system, so to speak.
I definitely participated. Probably took a while to get it out of my system.
Longer than high school?
Yeah. Talk about college.
Did your parents ever catch on to anything that you were doing in high school that was rebellious, which actually sounds somewhat normal, but we'll call it rebellious? And or do you? So you say no, they didn't.
They didn't let on.
Yeah.
If they did, there was no confrontation. I have to believe they knew.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to talk about it, and neither did I, and that's kind of how it worked out. And it was interesting, the dynamic. My brother was not like I was.
Okay.
He was the rebellious child. He was the one that didn't care about school, who didn't play sports. He was always a hard worker. He always had a job. But he played a different role in the family, which was the one who took the flack from the traditional parents. And I was the one who got the praise from the traditional parents. And we kind of honed into those roles through high school. And so I was probably able to have that rebellious behavior and keep it hidden, and know that since I was kind of perceived as the good kid, I got away with it.
Did he have any resentment for you?
Oh yeah.
He did.
Oh,
would he
and
try to beat you up and things like that?
We did not get along that great until after he moved out, which was, we're traditional. We were brothers. We fought.
Yeah.
And we didn't really hang out. And he positioned me as the annoying little kid brother. So I always wanted to hang out with him because he's an older brother, so he's cool. He never wanted me to hang out with him until after high school. After he graduated from high school, moved out of the house, then our relationship had a pretty significant change. And then communication we've had since, conversations we've had, he was always really proud of me in my athletics and school. He just never would have let on
that's
early
cool.
on. Yeah.
Are you guys close now?
Very close.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Does he live in the Detroit area near you?
Yeah,
or?
he's in Novi, and he's married, and I got two nieces and a nephew.
Yeah,
so
I saw the pictures in your
kids.
office. Yeah, they're beautiful.
They are.
How cool.
They're a great family. And so now it's interesting. We have this dynamic flip, right? Of he got married, has kids, traditional suburban house, sort of more modeled like our family was. And I'm single and I run a business and I travel a lot and my parents don't understand what I do or why I do it or why I'm not married and why I don't have kids. And so it's like, almost feels like there's this flip of now he's the good kid.
Yeah,
I'm
right?
the rebellious one.
Why can't you be more like your brother?
Right.
I love that. Are you close with your parents? Do you see
I'm
them?
very close.
You
with
are?
them.
Okay.
Yeah, I see them all the time.
Yeah.
They moved to be fairly close
Okay.
to me. They take care of my dog all the time, which is really helpful. Stanley. They allow me to have a dog and still do the things that I do and run a business.
Are they retired?
They're both retired.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Got it. What kind of work did your dad do?
Yeah, he had an interesting path. He started out as a cop. He was a cop in Detroit in the 60s.
Wow.
Including up and through the riots that happened.
Jeez.
So he had some really fascinating stories as I was growing up that I've heard all 1,000 times. And he retired from the police force not long after the riots. I think in 1969 he retired, or 70, because in his words he said he was tired of spending more time in receiving hospital than on the job. He was tired of getting stabbed and shot at. Never hit with a bullet, but certainly shot at many times. And that stuck with me as a kid, that was a job. That was a career. I mean, my dad was the bravest person in the world for having put himself in that position. And it was always, I wore it as this big badge of honor that my dad was a police officer back in the day, even though it wasn't in my lifetime. Has a really interesting change in that feeling towards his career as I grew older and as I became more entrenched in the Detroit community and more understanding of the history. It started to become this sort of dichotomy of pride and shame because of how the police force in Detroit in the 60s behaved.
Right.
Behaved and was perceived. So that was something in my 20s and 30s that was something I had to work to resolve as far as how I felt about his past.
When he stopped being a Detroit policeman, what did he do?
Yeah, he went to school to get his associate's degree in accounting, and then went into a business path. Ended up running a steel company, small steel company in Southeast Michigan for many years. And actually before that, he owned, in the 80s, he owned a retail computer store.
Wow.
And this is an interesting history for me, or influence on me, in that those were the years when he owned that store. I was like, oh, Dad owns a store. I didn't know the word entrepreneur at that point.
Yeah, that wasn't like as much of a thing like today.
I was 10 years old, so it's like, oh, he owns a store. He has a business. He's a businessman, and it didn't work out well. And it was clear, and it was known. Not that it was dwelled on by any stretch, but he gave it a shot, and it really didn't work out. And then he went back to a job and ended up running that steel company. So that sort of had an influence on me that being a business owner was really risky and maybe not a good idea.
What was money like when that was all going on?
Yeah, we refer to those as the lean years.
Was it talked about? Did the
my
family
mom,
talk about it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My mom would talk about it.
Okay.
And will still laughingly, talk about the lean years. At the time we didn't know. I was a kid. I didn't know, and everything was fine. We lived in the same house. My mom would laugh because she said we ate ring bologna and fried potatoes because it was cheap. And we loved it. Like, that's a great dinner for a
What's the problem?
kid. Yeah. I think she was sick of it.
Yeah.
But
did you feel tension at all? Like amongst your parents, was there a underlying sense that we can't do the things or provide the things, even though we have the home, maybe some of the other things that they may have wanted to do? And did you feel a tension at all around that, or no?
No,
No, okay.
no, it wasn't a tension, and so it's weird to say. It was just maybe it was just the perception of failure,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like we didn't get Christmas presents or we didn't go on vacation.
Yeah.
My parents did a great job of really not having it be visible to the kids. But I think maybe there was a, at that age and growing up, to me, everything was about accomplishment, right? And in that sense, I witnessed an attempt that didn't work out. And so my mind equated that with failure and
Yeah.
something that was negative. And
Yeah.
I absolutely don't see that as true now. I've certainly had many, many, many of my own failures in business and personal life and aside. So, as you mature, you have a different perspective on those things.
Why, from such an early age, did you have this mindset of accomplishment? I'm trying to figure out where that came from.
Yeah, that I don't know. Some theories, and I'm big on self-awareness. I've gone through a bit of a journey in the past few years, and see a therapist fairly regularly, and have uncovered that the dynamic between my father and I probably prompted that behavior. So there was my dad, and I love my dad, God love him. His way of connecting with his children was criticism. And so I think it was really an attempt to get beyond that.
I
At
see.
some point, I'm going to do something that's good enough.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it ever happened. I understand it much better now.
Yeah.
So there's an acceptance there. But I think my pursuit of athletics and pursuit of academic success was really looking for approval and acceptance from Dad.
Yeah, that's good. Did you play football in college as well and
Yes.
do track?
Yeah.
Yeah,
both.
we went to the same college, Albion College,
Go Brits.
the Brits. We were there at different times because
Slightly different times.
I'm about 10 years older than you. I came to find out. I felt really old when I figured that one out.
No.
But
You look great.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's that Albion well water
Right.
that we got, right? Yeah. What made you choose Albion?
You know what's funny? I thought about it as we were talking a little earlier. It was John Bancroft.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was so
Jeez.
influential to me
Yes.
that he suggested it, and I just took it.
Okay. Now, did you visit other schools or
Barely.
Yeah. No, you just.
And that to me.
You thought that was a good fit for you.
He did,
Yeah.
and he explained it. His son had went there,
Okay.
had a great experience. He was very encouraging of me continuing athletics, and his rationale was, to me at the time, I can remember it clear as day. He said, "You could go." He said, "You're good enough to go play at a bigger school. You could maybe go to a Division II school or a school that's in the MAC or something and play. But you don't know if you'll ever play in games because there's tons of talented kids there, and the caliber of guys you're going to be playing with is not the same. So you go to school, you go to Albion, you're going to be there with good guys who are all sort of pointed in the same direction, and I think you'll get a better experience that's going to serve you better long term if you go there. You get to play, you might play early in your career, and it's just a different dynamic with your teammates." And I bought that argument. I don't know if I buy it now. I really don't.
After going through
Yeah.
it.
And not to disparage Albion at all. I don't mean that. I mean in the other direction that I think that there could have been some benefit, incremental benefit, to a place that was more diverse. Albion is pretty homogenous.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And thankfully on the sports teams that wasn't wholly true.
Yeah.
Any diversity that we had within the school
Yeah,
was
that's true.
represented on the sports team at a much higher percentage than in the general population. So we had that. But John Bancroft
Yeah.
was really I think I
Influential
only
guy.
visited 2 other schools,
Uh-huh.
and I don't even think I applied to any.
Mm-hmm.
It was I kind of and I don't know why. This is something I still haven't figured out. I look back on it. I try not to have any regret, but just look back at it and with a little bit of bewilderment, which is I did not engage in the college search process at all
Yeah.
as a high school student, as a
Yeah.
high performer,
Yeah.
and I don't know why.
I feel like it was different times then. Because I didn't either. Not that I was a high performer, because I wasn't.
You were selling blow pops.
I was on but I was. I wasn't focused on getting A's like you were, but I mean Albion College was the place I went to. I mean it was somebody told me about. I won't give that whole story, but
Yeah.
I ended up there and without any investigation really, other than maybe thinking about a different school like Michigan State or something, but ended up at Albion. So yeah, I wonder because like with my kids, they're older now. We had to go see a whole bunch of schools. It was like a thing, It's like the school tour for like 6 months.
Right. And I
Where
wonder,
did this come from?
I wonder what would have happened if that would have been forced upon me. 'Cause I
Yeah.
certainly wasn't engaging in it on my own. But I had, I also wholly believe that everything I've done in my life up until this point has brought me here, and I feel great about where I'm at.
Yeah,
So
good
I
good
can't-
awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nowhere I'd rather be than right here with you.
There was a thing when I was there. I don't know if you had the same experience, and you were on sports teams, so there may have been more of a connection. But people that I was around, they would often say, "I'm transferring next semester. I'm transferring next semester." But then they'd always be back, and I was one of them.
Oh, I did it. I did apply to another school while I was at Albion, got accepted, and thought I was leaving. I was going to the Ross School of Business at Michigan.
In Michigan, yeah.
And
Many
then-
people had that one.
Yeah, and then it was like, never mind.
I'll just stay. Did you get involved in the fraternities and the Greek life?
I
No.
did not.
That's interesting because a lot of the football players were in one particular fraternity, maybe
Yeah.
two, but ATO was like the
Yeah.
big football fraternity.
And
So
I felt like I was maybe an honorary member of
Of that in
because
Sigma Nu
I
or
spent a
something?
lot of time there.
yeah,
In that, teammates were
Yeah.
there, but I ended up staying independent.
yeah,
Felt good about that.
yeah.
And
GDI. That's what people. I was in a fraternity. They did. Oh, he's a GDI.
Yep.
What was it? Goddamn
independent.
Yeah.
I think.
Where did you live?
I lived on campus all years.
You
I
do remember-
graduated in 3.5 too. I graduated
Oh,
early.
of course you did.
So I just,
You're a high
it was
performer.
a financial decision at that point.
Yeah, it
When I
was an
learned-
expensive school.
Yeah, I learned I could apply my scholarship
Mm-hmm.
to 3.5 instead of 4.
Okay.
And it was like, that makes all the sense in the
Accelerated.
world.
Yeah, wow. You had a good head on your shoulders as far as it related to that. Did you ever have a professor named Wes Dick?
I did not. I know of him,
Okay.
but I did not
Okay,
have
I'm
any
just
class
curious
with
because he's
him.
kind of legendary at Albion,
Mhm.
but we won't go down that road either.
Yeah.
As it relates to Albion, was there anybody there that was influential to you in any way? I mean, can I guess that you were an econ major?
I was.
Yeah, of course you were.
Yep.
I knew all the Drew Patricks,
Yeah.
the econ majors that
Econ.
ended up going into public accounting.
Yeah. Exactly. That was like
It was a track.
It was the track, and I didn't know it at the time. So when I started my first semester, I was undecided. I was either pre-med or econ.
Yeah.
And then after first semester, it was clear. I did not want to go to school for 12 years. I
Yeah.
wanted to be done in 3.5.
Mhm.
So took the econ route. Those classes felt very comfortable. But my influence didn't come. I can't think of any econ professors that were. I mean, everybody was fine, but I don't think there was profound effect. The one person who sticks out in my mind, who I still stay in touch with, who is probably the one who kept me at Albion, was my track coach.
Again, the track coach.
Yeah, Lance Coleman,
Wow.
who was probably there when you were there. He was the men's sprint coach, and ended up running for him freshman year, and it changed my experience. My first semester at Albion freshman year was really tough because one of my best friends had been killed in a car accident right before.
From high school?
From high school.
Wow.
So 5 days before high school graduation, one of my friends Was killed in
Wow.
an auto accident.
Was
so-
it what were the circumstances?
It was a drunk driver that hit a car of 4 kids who were stone sober, going home from they were at the movies or something, and hit them, and all 5 people died instantly.
Wow,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. So that had a profound effect on
Mm-hmm.
my transition from high school to college.
Mm-hmm.
So I was.
Can I just ask you a question about that? Because you were a senior, like 18 years old or
Mhm.
something. Was that your first sort of run-in with how life is so precious?
Absolutely.
Okay.
First real experience with death.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley, who was the one who was killed, was my girlfriend for a couple of years in high school, and her family became second family to me, and still are to this day. I ended up being the best man at her brother's wedding.
Wow.
Her father was
Jeez.
my first business partner, and this is all post.
Mm-hmm.
So that really, really amazing family, and she was the sweetest person in the world. So to see that happen to someone like her, I didn't get it. I couldn't come to grips with it, and it wasn't so much a loss of mine, but it was I just couldn't understand how the world would take someone like that
Yeah.
that early,
Mm-hmm.
and it really messed me up for a year.
Oh, I can imagine.
So freshman year, I went to go to Albion to play football,
Mhm.
and 2 weeks into football, I went into the coach's office and said, I don't have it.
Mhm.
I don't have any energy. I can't do this. And I quit. I never quit anything in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked to my parents, I was going to quit school. And they talked me out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then through that semester, I just was pretty lost. But I decided to stick out and run track second semester. And then Lance Coleman, coach, and the teammates, I just found a home.
Mm-hmm.
It just, for the first time since that accident, I felt at peace. And so that's why I stayed at Albion.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just felt like I found people who I connected with
Mm-hmm.
and who cared about me. And yeah, there we have it.
Now, have you kept in touch with Lance as well, or
Yeah,
you have?
yeah. So I talked to him a few weeks ago.
You did.
Uh-huh.
How old is he now?
He's 10 years older than me,
Okay.
too. So he always said I was him, 10 years younger and white.
Is he still at Albion?
He is.
No
Yeah,
kidding. Is he still the track
He's
coach?
the head track coach now.
Wow.
And
And how come you keep in touch with him? I mean, have you always just kept in touch?
yeah, and
Yeah.
not once or twice a year,
Yeah.
just say hi. How's it going?
Yeah.
And it's really because I credit him
Yeah.
with bringing me out of that
Yeah.
phase of my life,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of low point.
Mm-hmm. How often do you think about Ashley?
Not that often anymore. And I talk to her father or her brother almost every week.
Oh, wow.
They're some of the closest people in my life. So that there's been a lot of healing for me individually that happened over time. And yeah, that one, when I think about her, it's fond now, and
Yeah.
and it's seldom.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. When you came out of Albion, you went to Ernst & Young,
Yes.
public accounting for like a year?
For like 4 years.
Oh, 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
3 years,
And
4 years. Something.
did you like what you were doing, or I mean, because when I think about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the perfect do the right thing kind of job. You know, you get out of you got a clear path, you make a good income coming out of Albion. You know, you wake up in the morning, take your shower, go to work. You know exactly what you need to do.
It was my parents' ideal job for me, I think.
It's where your parents are like, okay, he's
Yeah.
safe. He's
Yep.
got a good job,
And
good
man,
company.
Here's the thing. I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I was good at it. I knew it wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great foundation of learning
Mm-hmm.
of the language of business. Accounting
Yeah.
literature is the language of business.
Yeah.
And you would think, and I thought, that this is a high integrity industry. And then Enron happened,
Yeah.
right? Like while I was in public accounting, Enron happened.
No
And
kidding. That's
it
when that was.
really
Huh?
changed the industry.
Wow, yeah.
Some would say for the better, some would say for the worse. But my own personal experience in that time, I really rejected from a values standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually ended up quitting pretty abruptly after about 3 years. There was a situation where one of my largest client there was an SEC publicly traded company. We had a great team of people. You know, it was the A team in the office, right? It was the high performers in that company who got placed onto this team for this client. I was one of them. Loved the people I worked with. We worked really hard. In public accounting, you know, you work 80-hour weeks. You work 7 days a week in the winter. And that at the time, it didn't bother me at all because I just, from my upbringing, it was like, that's what you do. You're paying your dues. You're like, you're 23 years old. You should be working 7 days a week. What else are you going to do? And I do not subscribe to that theory anymore. Very different approach with our younger teammates here. But we worked really hard, did really great work. We're an audit team, right? Auditing statements. And at the end of the audit, it just seemed like everything we found, everything we did, an hour-long meeting between the partner and the CFO washed all of it away. And I was so discouraged by that. I quit.
Interesting.
I walked in and said,
Wow.
I can't do this. And there's still, I have great friends to this day that still work for that company who I have the utmost respect for. And it was just my reaction to this situation.
Yeah, 25 years old or whatever you were. Yeah.
And Ashley's father, Dave, had started a business on his own, just him from home, selling industrial storage equipment, shelving and racking and freight lifts and things like that. And I had been talking to him for a couple months about his new business. I said, that's really cool. Like, it's really cool that you're able to do this. And, you know, those two parallel things were happening at the same time. And I think I was venting to him about my situation at work. And he said, quit. This was so anti my father, right? But Dave was like a second dad to me. He said, just quit. Why? Why are you going to spend your time doing that if you don't believe in it?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what am I going to do? He's like, you want to do this? And I said, yeah, I think we could turn this into something way more than what it is. Because he had one client. He was basically acting as a consultant for one client. Yeah. And I said, yeah, I could do that. I could take this and I could go find other clients to do the same thing for. And you've got the relationships with vendors and this will be fun. I'm 25 years old. I quit. I went in the next day and quit. And my partner in the office at the accounting firm pulls me aside and he said, I don't think you understand what you're doing here. I said, why? What are you talking about? And he said, do you realize what you're giving up on a whim? I said, what? He's like, well, do you know how much money I make? Do you know, I've got a membership at the DAC and I've got a membership at this club and I travel to these places and this is how much money you make. I said, so? I was like, I don't have any worries about me making money down the road. That's not what matters. I just want to do something I feel good about every day. And unfortunately, I don't feel good about this anymore. So appreciate the concern, but I'm out. Yeah. And then I jumped in and I knew I had enough savings that I could live for about 4 months. And Dave was basically like, all right, you're my partner now.
He brought you in as a partner.
Yeah, I bought in.
You bought in. Okay.
He said, how much money do you have? I said, I got this much. He goes, that'll buy you 49%.
That's great.
And he probably got a good deal on it because he didn't have much going on at that point either. Yeah, sure. It was great for both of us. And we had so much fun. It was so much fun.
But so, you always took what seemed to be kind of the right path. When you decided to make this change in your life and leave Ernst & Young, did you talk to your parents at all about it?
I don't really recall.
Were you nervous to let them know that you just quit your job and, that you're going into this, essentially this, startup-y type company, and
Yeah.
you used a bunch of your savings to buy 49% from Ashley's dad?
Right, I know. What I remember, and to their credit, even though their viewpoint's very different than mine, and maybe their risk tolerance is different, my parents have really always been supportive of the decisions I've made.
That's cool.
Even my dad, for all the flack I give him for being critical and not really knowing how to connect, he's always been supportive of whatever path I took.
Yeah.
So at that time, I think they were more concerned about me going to work with Dave than they were about me going just on my own.
Okay.
'Cause there was a weird dynamic there. I think there was a little bit of jealousy, and
Yeah.
I really saw them as family. And Dave's a very different dynamic than my father. So I think that was more concerning than
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder on some level, with your dad's criticism, I'm only guessing, it really has more to do with him than you. It's more about like what he knew he had in him and projecting that out onto you, and because he believed what you could accomplish is what he could have accomplished. And then he had the computer store, which failed, but he had that entrepreneurial spirit. And probably as being a police, being on the police force, some discipline. And, for you to go off and do something entrepreneurial was probably pretty exciting. I'm sure very proud of you for taking that leap.
And he has actually verbalized that sense, which is a big deal for him. But my dad, anything he did that was discouraging to me or critical, he came by it honestly. I know from hearing stories about my grandfather that I never met that was the dynamic. And this is, we can relate this to personal lives and I think business cycles too, right? We only do what we know, mostly, right? Until there's a conscious decision to break the cycle. Yeah. So the behavior that my grandfather modeled was the behavior that my father modeled, and it took years of therapy and self-assessment, self-awareness to say, I want to break that cycle. I think we do the same thing in the company, right? We talk about, these are just the way things are in business, and we accept them. There's a parallel there. No, we don't have to accept them. It just takes somebody to stand up and say, no, we're going to break this cycle.
Yeah. Do you feel like our kind of generation has more access to that kind of thought process than, say, like our parents did?
100%. Yeah. And having not been involved back then, but it just seems like the language of the workplace has shifted, and there's a desire, and maybe it's because the workforce is demanding it, right? Is it supply side or demand side? I don't know. The younger workforce wants very different things. So if there are places that are offering it, the great talent's going to shift and flow towards those places, and then we've got traditional companies that in Southeast Michigan I've talked to are saying, man, I have so much trouble hiring. We have the hardest time hiring. That's everybody's problem, right? And I say, no,
Right.
I don't have any problem getting great talent to apply to jobs at Skidmore. Why not? Well, because we have a great place to offer.
Yeah.
And we're clear about what we're offering, and we follow through on it. That wasn't always the case. I mean, we had to work very hard to get there.
For sure.
Being authentic is hard, I think.
It's interesting that you say that. I feel like it's so freeing. Like once you maybe getting to it because we're so wired, but then once you're there, it's just like, oh, I can just be me now. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Pressure's off.
But it's the getting there.
Yeah, it is.
And I do
You're
think
right.
it's the getting there because of the constraints that have been established
Totally.
societally.
Yeah, for sure.
We're supposed to behave in a certain way, especially in the workplace.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have a boundary.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have a work life and a home life.
Right.
We talk about there's no work life and home life, there's life,
Yeah.
right? And how do we have a healthy component in both,
Mm-hmm.
or in the workplace?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you're right. It's really challenging to get too authentic, but once you're there,
Mm-hmm.
it's not hard. It's
Yeah.
not hard to maintain.
Yeah. When you were doing the business with Ashley's dad, how long were you in that business, and did it grow beyond the two of you? And
Yeah.
what happened with it?
I did that for about 4 years.
Okay.
And this was, man, you learn so much in every step of the journey, right?
Yeah, so true.
Dave, so passionate about what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
He loved it. And most of what we were doing was designing and installing equipment for auto dealer back rooms, like parts departments and service areas. And then we did the same thing in some manufacturing facilities and distribution facilities. And he could not wait to get up and do that.
I loved it.
Yeah, he still does. Company still exists.
Okay.
Dave owns, I believe he owns 100% of it. I don't know at this point, but it's grown. He's got 2 offices and 12 employees or something like that, and he's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
I left, we were about 6 or 7 employees, and the whole thing there was, I just don't love this as much as that guy does. So I got to find something that I love as much as him, because I'm jealous of how much he loves doing this every day. And that was it. And so I had a conversation with him and said, I think I need to move on to something else. And that presented a really interesting dynamic shift between him and I. We had about a year where we almost didn't speak. So he was really pissed.
Mm-hmm.
He was really offended that this wasn't, in his mind, and he verbalized this later, this wasn't good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't about that. It wasn't that it wasn't good enough. It was actually, I wanted what he had. And I couldn't find it where we were at. And I wanted to go look for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to that point, and everything. We're great friends again. Talk almost every week. But leaving AME is the name of the company. Leaving AME, I took a couple of years to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I had been in a group called Vistage, peer mentoring group for business owners and executives, and that's where I met Tim Smith. And I did a few consulting projects.
And Tim, at the time, was the owner of Skidmore Studios, or was he working at Skidmore?
Tim was working at Skidmore. So this was 2009. Tim was working at Skidmore and approached me for some help, financial consulting, on his attempt at purchasing Skidmore.
Okay.
He had approached May Skidmore, who was the daughter of Leo, the founder, who was the owner of the company, and said he had been running the business for a few years for her. She was off in, I think, Chicago, going to school, kind of absentee owner.
Yeah.
Economy took a tank in 2008, 2009. He was here to shoulder that burden, and then went to her and said, "Look, if I'm gonna go through this again, I need it to be mine." And he wanted to buy the company from her. Tim reached out to me for some help. He said, "You're the only guy I know who knows numbers. So you want to take a look at what I'm doing here and tell me if I'm being stupid or what?" And so I took a look at it with him, and we just started to form this bond. And I got introduced to this environment that I had no idea existed. I came from public accounting and manufacturing and auto retail, which are pretty traditional industries across the board. I stepped into this creative studio and said, "Oh my God, I didn't even know a place like this existed." And it was fascinating. Like, this can be work. It was like that immediate, this realization that some of those walls can be broken down of what I perceived a traditional workplace to be, or an appropriate workplace to be. And they weren't doing anything necessarily profound at the time, but it was just a creative place, creative people to go. And once Tim was kind of had his transaction figured out, he said, "Why don't you're not doing anything. You're, doing these consulting gigs, and why don't you come work with me full time? I need a CFO. I need a right hand, and I think we're aligned in what we want to do and what we want to create. So I'd love it if you would help me turn this into what I want to turn it into." And pretty much without thinking about it, and this is like the theme, right? Things just kind of fallen into place without me thinking about it too much. I said sure, and I joined the team. That was 9 years ago. Much like you described time in Albion, there were, I don't know, a dozen times, not a dozen, half a dozen times that I went to Tim over those 8 years and said, I think I might have to move on. I think I might need to transfer. And for whatever reason, it never happened. It never made sense. I was being more thoughtful than I had been in the past and saying, I don't want to move just to move. I want to make sure I'm moving to something that's right. And it never happened. It just never made sense to move to any of the opportunities that presented themselves. We continued to work here, changing things here in a pretty dramatic way, but that change took a lot of time. And then it happened. And then, I had just had this was just over a year ago, December of 17.
Yep.
I had a conversation with Tim, another one, that just said, I think I got about a year left. I got about a year, and then I'm gonna have to go do something on my own.
And you were struggling because, why? What was it that you were struggling with?
Even though I had been placed in the role of president at Skidmore, I still didn't feel that I had full ownership and control over what it actually became, because I didn't, because I wasn't the owner. I had gotten burned in a previous ownership experience, so I wasn't interested in being a minority partner with Tim, and he knew that from the beginning. And I just really I had this desire to see what I could do if I were in control. And as much as I wanted it to happen here, it wasn't going to. I didn't think it was going to. So we were open about it, and it was interesting. Tim sent me a couple of jobs and said, I think this might be a good fit for you along the way. He's like, and I don't want to keep you from moving on to something that you're really interested in.
Yeah.
So it was, we just had that really open
as it should
relationship.
Be. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he cared about me as a person more so than an employee. And I knew that.
Yeah.
So
you were friends.
Yeah, that's what allowed us to talk like that. Yeah.
Just going back for a second, in your personal life, you were married at one point, 07?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what happened?
So I married someone.
Because you mentioned you weren't married anymore.
I'm not.
You said you were single, so you didn't say you weren't married, but you said you were single. So
I didn't say
one would
divorced,
deduce that.
Now, I was married for 4 years.
And
And we had dated for 5 years before that, so we were together for 9 years. And as somebody that I knew since 6th grade.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you were young when you were dating then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right after
through
college.
Albion and everything, or
No. Post college. So
post college. Okay.
We had we met in middle school, and then her family kept moving back and forth from Australia to Detroit because one of her parents was Australian.
Okay.
One was from here, so she would come and go. She had left for a few years, and then we reconnected after college, right after college, so 22 or so, and started dating. And yeah, ended up getting married. I think I was 27, 2006, if I recall. And it was kind of because it was the time to do that. Friends were getting married. We'd been together for 5 years. We absolutely loved each other. But just at the time, didn't realize, just because we loved each other and she was a great person and so was I, didn't mean we should be married.
Yeah.
So we got married. It didn't work out. and 4 years later, we split up. It was
Mhm.
interesting though. We have one of those rare stories where it's like there were no lawyers involved. We didn't have any kids, so it was easy.
Yeah.
And the morning of the court hearing to finalize the divorce, afterwards, her and I went out to breakfast.
That's great.
Yeah. And strangely enough, we talk about once or twice a year. She's remarried and has a couple kids, and she's got the life that she envisioned, and I am legitimately happy, like for her. And I got a text from her this morning, just
No
saying
kidding.
hi. Yeah.
Wow.
Out of nowhere.
Interesting.
And I think this speaks to our relationship. Well, there's two stories I'll tell. The day it became public that Tim died. Spoiler alert. Just slip that in there. The first call I got was from Jessica,
Oh wow.
and we talked for half an hour,
Wow.
and
Interesting.
it's just, yeah, it was really sweet, and I really appreciate that we have that relation, even though it's not a regular part of my life anymore. It just meant a lot for her to reach out and be there for me at that
Yeah.
time.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So in 17 December, you were
Yeah.
going through this. I don't know what I'm going to do. and-
Conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in January.
January, a year ago,
Yeah.
I had a meeting with Tim, as we did regularly in this office. Sat down for about 20 minutes, talked about, we had just had our annual strategic planning meeting. Feeling really good about the year, feeling healthy and strong, and things are going to be good. And we had a rough year in 17, and we just felt like we were poised to put all of that behind us and have a great 2018. And he had a lunch meeting, something he had to go to, so he left the office, and 2 hours later I got a call from his wife that said, I don't know what to do. I just got a call from the hospital. They said Tim's there. So can you meet me there? So I went to the hospital, and his heart just stopped. He was in his car, stopped at a light, and his heart stopped. So crazy. No blockage. It wasn't a heart attack in the traditional sense. They describe it as an electrical issue, not a plumbing issue. His brain just stopped telling his heart to beat like that fast. And like I said, I was with him an hour before, and he seemed upbeat and healthy, and there was no sign of anything. They were able to restart his heart. There was a police officer that was just happened to be right there. So I got his heart started, but he never regained consciousness. He never regained any brain activity, and I think it was 6 days later, he passed. It was really
What were those 6
unexpectedly.
days like?
Really tough, obviously. Just, I saw him, so I had a pretty strong sense that it wasn't going to turn out well. But I didn't want to communicate that necessarily to the team, because it was assumptive, right? It was, I don't know, I'm not a doctor and I'm not God. I don't know what's going to happen. So it was this trying to maintain hope and stability, both with his family, because I know his family and his wife and his sons I've known for years. And then our studio family, who was 12 people at the time, small group. You know, Dad, essentially, was on the edge. And it was just a really emotional time. And you don't go through stuff like that regularly, so you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Would you come into work?
Yeah, we actually gave everybody flexibility and space. I had the conversation, I remember, while he was in the hospital, we were coming to work, talking about it, giving updates as we had them. just, you know, those who prayed, those who hoped. And it was, it really did, it sounds cliche, but man, did the team come together like family. It felt like family, still feels like family now.
Sure.
And then when he ultimately passed, 6 days later, I called everybody individually that night to give them the news. And I gave everybody the choice. I said, I don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. Let's just, there's a lot going on here emotionally. So if you want to come in tomorrow, I'll be there. If you don't want to come in tomorrow, don't. Like, whatever you need to do, do it. And without exception, everybody came in. And we all just kind of were together there for each other, told stories, cried. It was brutal, but it was also something really special about that time together, because it is really revealing of the character of people that we have in our lives here. And everybody expressed a ton of appreciation and gratitude for not only Tim and what he, how he brought us together, but what we had going forward, the opportunity, what we had going forward. So it was, man, looking back, I can't believe it was a year ago.
It's unreal. A lot has happened in that time.
Yeah.
Going back before that, what was Tim like in the studio and also in the community?
Yeah. He was kind of goofy, right? He was fun. He was, and again, outside of work, he was a good friend of mine. I've known him for 13 years. He was somebody who was very different from most of the men that I knew in my life. In that he was a really good listener, right? And most of the authoritative or men or people that were in positions of power or influence were much more direct, outgoing, overpowering in a sense. And he was really more one to kind of take things in than be the one to espouse. I always thought that was interesting about him. Here, he was dad, for sure. He liked to be the protector and the guardian and the one who cared for the studio. He liked to be the one in the summer to go out, run out and pick up ice cream and bring it back for everybody here. He really embraced that role that he gave himself. Out in the community, we came to find out, I didn't know this, and he and I, we had lunch every week. We talked almost every day. We were essentially partners, even though I didn't have ownership at the time. That's really how we treated the business. And I had no idea that he was regularly mentoring a significant number of young, aspiring entrepreneurs. Because he didn't talk about it. He didn't come back and say, oh, hey, I met with this person for coffee this morning, and I met with this person, But at his funeral and afterwards, I had no less than a dozen people who had never met, never heard of, come up to me and say, I've been meeting with Tim for months or for the past year, and he was so helpful, and he just wanted to help people on their path. And we knew that about him, but we didn't know the extent to which he was actually living it outside of these walls.
He wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
When he was doing the book, I'm assuming you were all aware of the book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you in favor of the book? Did you care? Did you not care? Like, good use of time, not good use of time?
Honestly, I was pissed about the book
Mm-hmm.
at the time. We'll be candid. Yeah, one of our values at the studio is speak openly and candidly,
You
so
gotta
Tim
do
will
it.
appreciate this.
Yes, he
Doesn't
will.
he, as a nerd?
He will.
No, I thought, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally at that point in time, the company was struggling.
He's off writing this book.
And he said, yeah, we're struggling. We just had to lay off a bunch of people, which is brutal when you have to do that. They're good people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much after that is when he came to me and said, I always wanted to write a book. I think I'm going to write a book. I was like, really? Is this the best time for that? It's like, no, I really want to do it. But at that point in time, I said, okay, here's an opportunity. I had the sense for a while that I questioned Tim's passion around the studio as it existed at the time. And I don't think he had admitted that he didn't have the passion for the studio, but I was questioning it. What I saw was a tremendous amount of passion around this project and the book. I said, okay, maybe this can work for both of us. You can focus on the book, but you have to allow me to run the business without your involvement at the studio. And it took some time to kind of work that out, what that really meant. But he said, okay. So that was when I got promoted to president and got to take over the day-to-day decision-making for the company. So it did work out. But when he first brought it up, I thought, what are you doing? I was not on board.
What was he doing? Why was he writing it? And what tie-in did it have to the studio? Or if any?
Yeah. We tried to shoehorn some fit into a tie to the studio, and it wasn't there.
It's just something he had to get out.
He had to get it out. And in hindsight, it's so clear as to why he had to get it out. This is the legacy for his sons.
Yeah.
This is the
Harrison?
story. Harrison and Hayden.
Hayden, that's right.
And it was his, come to find out, it was his legacy to the community. He had this passion for promoting and developing young entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And the studio wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
It wasn't doing it at the time. It's really not doing that now necessarily, directly. So for whatever reason, I think your words were perfect. He had to get it out, and he did. And we were all really thankful that he did, because the timing just worked out really well. He was really proud of that book.
The book is called Dare Mighty Things,
Dare
and
Mighty
we'll
Things.
put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And it's a great book.
It's a field guide for millennial entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's a great book. And it's well done all the way around because it's creative too.
Yeah.
I noticed when I was doing a little bit of back research within the book, he had at the end where he wrote a little bit about himself. He had a Twitter account, Smith Castle, at Smith Castle, and I noticed it's still there. And I wondered, when something impactful like this happens and there's an account like that, what goes through the minds of those closest to the people, and what do they do with it? Because it's still there, but there hasn't been a post since 17, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think it was December 17. Is that intentional? Have you thought about that? Did you know it was there?
I did. His family controls that stuff.
Okay.
So anything that was on the book or personal side, it's up to them
Sure.
what happens. I will say, here at the studio, I struggled with that one big time. Is when do I turn his email off?
Yeah.
You know,
Jeez,
and I
yeah.
had it all. It took a year. I just turned it off
No
a couple
kidding.
weeks ago.
Would emails still come through? I mean, aside from the, like an actual email, like, hey, Tim, just reaching out.
A few, yeah, and they became less and less.
Yeah.
And it was under the guise of we don't want to miss anything from a work standpoint that would have been relevant.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But I think it was more of a not wanting to let go, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some reason, pick an arbitrary date, it felt like after a year, it felt like the right time.
Mm-hmm. Was it ceremonial in any way? Or
Nope.
was there just a message like, let's turn it off?
It was just me,
You just said,
behind the scenes.
okay.
And it was like one day,
You just,
I just said, you know what?
it's time.
It's time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell anybody else about it. 'Cause I think they were only coming to me anyway.
Mm-hmm. When you did it, what did that feel like?
I almost felt a little guilty.
Interesting.
Which was, yeah, like,
Tim's like, what?
yeah,
You're turning my email off?
right.
Okay, go ahead.
Like it's really final then.
Yeah.
Like the email has any relevance.
I know,
to it,
I know.
It's just.
But
these
it's
weird
connections
things.
to people,
Right.
It is what it is, obviously. It's those connections to people and how hard it is to let go,
Yeah.
And then this past year, 2018, you were running the studio prior to, but now you were in this position where Tim obviously had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
You're close with his family,
Mm-hmm.
his wife and his kids, and you were running the studio, but then at a certain point there was like, how is this going to keep going? There was that piece to it as well. So how did that all transpire for you, and what was that like?
Yeah, I look back. A year ago, it was just. His wife's name is Colleen. Colleen and I had conversations, and we were talking every day. I just wanted to reassure her that everything was okay. Whatever she wanted to do, because she inherited the remainder. They were actually partners in the business, so she inherited his shares. So she was 100% owner after his passing. And my assurance to her was, whatever you want to do with this, I'm going to keep it in good standing until you decide what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That was my commitment to her. So we had a little time to figure out what was going to happen. And I didn't have any expectation at that point. It was a little scary for me.
Sure.
It was scary for everybody here, not knowing what was going to happen. But when you have a grieving family, how do you pose a question about a studio at that point in time? It didn't make any sense. So we just kind of were open about the conversation that we're gonna keep everything going as is until you decide you want to do something else, or something happens that we need to make some decision on. But
Right.
I'm here. Everything is open to you. But Colleen was clear she didn't want to be a day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
part of the studio. So that transition just was fairly smooth in what happens, on day 1 through day 90 or so. And then Colleen approached me not too long after, a couple months after, and just said, do you think anyone would be interested in buying this from me? Because I don't think I want to hold on to it. It's good. It didn't take very long for her to come to that realization.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it was probably 3 months into this situation, my perspective on it changed. And it was, like we talked about, whereas before there wasn't an opportunity to really have full control, now it seems like there might be. And after having gone through this tragedy with the people who were here, I had this really profound new sense of attachment to this place. And there's a realization that this place has a soul of its own. It's 60 years old this year, right? It's been around since 1959. I had conversations with Skidmore, conversations with Colleen. At Tim's funeral, there were people who worked for Skidmore in the 70s and 80s who were showing up, and just different eras of team members who's this place was really special to them and a big part of their life. And it hit me that this isn't just a company. It's not just what it is today. It's got a life of its own. And it deserves to be treated with respect and given every opportunity to breathe and live into the future. And for whatever reason, I felt an immediate sort of attachment to that purpose, and decided fairly quickly that I wanted to be the one to shepherd it forward for the time being. And so I didn't voice that. I didn't express it to Colleen, but she came to me and said, do you think there's anybody who might be interested in purchasing the studio? And I said, yeah, you're looking at them. And her response was, I was a little surprised because I thought she was just baiting me.
I was going to ask,
because it seemed like, to the outside world, it seemed obvious. Because I'd been running it.
Yeah, to me, I thought you would.
But it wasn't obvious to me at the beginning. And to her, it wasn't either, because she had had so many conversations with Tim about how I didn't want to buy into the studio. I wasn't interested in owning it, from her words. And we had the conversation around, well, why would you want it now? Is this just because it's here? Do you really want it? And it was that conversation where I'm like, no, I wasn't interested in being a minority partner. But now this needs someone to own it. And I feel that it's right for me. So circumstances have changed and my perspective has changed, and I want it. So it is yours to do with what you want, but know that I'm in.
Okay.
If you're interested. So a few days later, I think we had a deal worked out. I mean, it's just, Colleen and I have a relationship that is open and transparent and caring, and she believed that I wanted nothing but the best for her and her family in the studio, and she believed that I wanted nothing but the best for this place that she cared about, because Tim cared about it so much. So with that mutual understanding, it was easy. It was just happened.
Were you scared?
I wasn't through the process. And people kept asking, do you think it's going to be different? No, I've been running it for a while, and Tim's been gone for months, so I know what it's like to have this responsibility. And then we closed on September 30th. October 1st, I woke up and I was like, shit. What did I do? This feels different. How is it like this? It just felt different. There was this, not in a bad way, but just this, I got something on my back now.
It's truly yours now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what it might have been more than anything is my history, personal and professional, has not involved true commitment in a way that I was able to keep necessarily.
Yeah.
And this felt like this is a commitment, and I'm making it, and I'm going to stick to it. And that felt a little daunting on day one. But day one was probably one of the greatest days of my life, unexpectedly. I was driving, and so it was actually October 4th, because I think it was Friday was the 30th, and Monday was the first day of the studio. So I'm driving in on Monday, and I say to myself, I probably should have prepared something to say. And I had nothing planned, and I just thought, it's kind of going on as usual. I was trying not to make a big deal out of it, because it was really not much of a change for the other people that were here, and so I didn't want to, self-grandized kind of thing. It was
For
just
sure.
like, I got it now. Let's go. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
You with me, team?
Yeah.
And so I didn't really think about what I was going to do. And then, I mean, of course, I didn't have to do anything. It was all done for me.
Mm-hmm.
I came in on that first day, and the staff had decorated the studio, hired a trumpet player, invited my family in,
Oh, wow.
and I walked into this celebration of me, which is not something that I'm accustomed to.
Yeah.
And it was so great.
Mm-hmm.
Just heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about it pretty regularly. That day meant so much to me to know that, from waking up and feeling that weight to coming in and feeling this love from the people that I see and care about every day, to see it return, it was like, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Everybody had written down on a card what they appreciated about me.
Mm.
And they went around the room and read them. Like, what kind of workplace has that? Ours does.
It's pretty fantastic.
Right? My family was there, and I was like, talked about my family dynamic a little, right?
Yeah.
We don't talk about feelings in our family.
Uh-huh.
So when it came around to my brother, he had a card that he had written out, and he tried 4 times to read it and couldn't get through the first sentence. So finally, he just handed me the card.
Yeah. Did you read it aloud?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my mom wrote something that was very touching, but also very factual in nature.
Mm.
And it was interesting to see these two worlds collide.
Yeah.
Of my upbringing and family. That my family is loving and caring. They just don't know how to express it.
Mm-hmm.
We've never expressed it verbally or physically. Like, it's known, it's understood, but it's sort of hidden.
Mm.
And this place that I've now been a part of building, where it's very out in the open and encouraged and real, I got to see where I came from and where I'm at now,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt so good about it.
It's cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
I love that day.
Yeah. That's going to stick around a while. The rest of your life.
And it was today. Now it's like the inspiration for, what we're doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because having a place like that to come work is possible, and it's so healthy and fulfilling to the people who get the opportunity to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So now I want to make sure we continue that.
Yeah.
I want to be able to offer it to more people.
Mm-hmm.
We never talked about growth before, because we didn't think about it in terms of allowing more people to be a part of this wonderful experience,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing more people to participate in doing incredible work for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
We thought about it in terms of money, and money's never been the motivating factor here.
Yeah.
So we would say, I don't care if we grow. I don't care if we grow because I don't care about the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
But that perception of mine has changed pretty dramatically. And it's interesting. I went back. We found last year an interview with Leo Skidmore, our founder, about why he started Skidmore.
Mm.
And so there's this common thread that was about, he said, I'm not doing it for the money, and I'm not doing it because I want to be my own boss like everybody else. I don't care about either of those things. What I care about is being fair and honest with the people who work with me, and creating an environment that is healthier than any other for the creative talent in Detroit.
Mm.
It was like, that was in 1959.
Yeah.
And that's Skidmore today. You
Yeah.
take those words and put Tim Smith on them or put Drew Patrick on them,
Yeah.
and they still hold.
I've seen those somewhere. Are those documented?
I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
they're public, but yeah,
No,
maybe they will
I
be.
have them in my notes.
Huh, really?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay.
Yeah, somehow we dug that up.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe paraphrased, not exactly, but to the extent of how you just said it. Do you feel, I think sometimes in my head I think about when you start your own thing and it's kind of always been yours and I'm relating it to my own experience. But now you would be fourth generation Skidmore.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel that there's any sort of additional responsibility to keep this company going on for many years to come, well beyond you?
Yeah, I think that's what I felt on day one.
60 friggin' years?
Yeah, that's my personality too. Like, you go through those personality tests. I don't know if it's StrengthsFinder or what.
Yeah.
Which one is like responsibility is far and away the one I like or that I represent. So I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
And I do believe there's an added responsibility that this is something that preceded me and was much more than me individually. I don't feel like it's my baby.
Yeah.
I feel like it's this treasure that I have in hand that I'm, marching across the whatever desert with.
Yeah.
And it's not. I think there's an added element of responsibility from it, but I embrace that. I like it. I think it's why it made sense for me to do it.
Yeah.
That it's almost more fulfilling to me individually, for whatever reason, to shepherd this greater thing rather than start my own thing from scratch and see what I can turn it into.
Yeah. It's really an amazing journey what you've gone through in your career and both personally, and how there's so many things that become interconnected and get you to the place where you're just the right person to take this 60-year-old company into the next 60 years. Maybe you won't be all 60 years of it. You'll be alive. You'll only be 100.
Only 100.
But you'll be alive.
I'll still be running marathons.
I hope you will. Wouldn't surprise me.
Meditating at a minimum.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. So I congratulate you on taking it over and witnessing your values at work while this was all going on last year. Was very remarkable. And you're a good role model for anybody in business about doing the right things. You really are. It was neat to watch that from the sidelines.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It wasn't always that way.
Right.
For me.
Right.
I mean, it took some pretty significant mistakes to get to a point where I was wholly understanding of my own values and confident in living them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a situation post AME. I mentioned briefly that I was, but I bought into a company that ended up failing miserably. It was unfortunately very tied to the mortgage industry in 2007, 2008, right before the crash. So I essentially put everything I had into a business as a minority partner that was tied to the mortgage industry. And I did it purely because I thought it was going to be profitable. That was it. I didn't buy into the vision. I didn't buy into the product or service. I just thought, this thing's going to kill. And I got a chance to be a part of it. So I'm going to get in. And I lost everything. I literally lost everything. Everything I had made on the first company, plus a bunch I had borrowed from my dad. And that was such a tremendous lesson in living your values and not living your values and what will happen if you don't. Because, I talk about leaving my job at the accounting firm on principle, and then I go off and do, I had a misstep. I did something that was not aligned with who I was and wanted to be, and it was really painful.
Yeah.
Financially and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
I got involved with some people who just weren't good people.
Yeah.
And
You know, those are the lessons that we learn along the way, right? And they make us better. Now you're in a position to not make those mistakes again.
yeah,
And, you know, you guys are doing really cool stuff. Food branding, you were showing me some things. Sports branding with the football helmets and is it all football equipment, it looked like?
there's apparel. It's all
Apparel.
protective gear.
Protective gear.
Mhm.
Really unique and cool work that you guys are doing here. So it's exciting. You're in Detroit. You guys took on this space years ago in the Madison building, but you mentioned beforehand that you're moving.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you guys moving? Are you staying in
We're
Detroit?
staying downtown.
Okay.
We'll be in Detroit, building that's in Capitol Park, which is just
Sure.
2 blocks away
Yeah,
from
yeah.
here.
Okay.
But, you know, back in 2010 when we were negotiating this lease, rent was cheap.
Right.
It was
You were
and-
first movers down here.
We were. It was funny. We became the experts on moving to Detroit because we were early on.
That's documented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we thought it was so funny
Mhm.
that we brought 20 people downtown and we were getting calls from the press about commenting on other moves downtown. But it was a different world. It was a different world in Detroit in 2010 and 11.
Yeah.
And thankfully, so much has changed and so much has grown. So people have been commenting, you know, our lease is up this year, and they say, "Oh, are you mad about your rent going up?" And I said, "No, I think this is great.
Mhm.
I'm thankful that the market is driving this increase because it's good for all of us."
Yeah.
So while we took on way more space than we needed because we could afford it 10 years ago, we're just going to right size and stay downtown.
So you're just moving down the block, not far.
down the block.
Yeah.
We will be a part of Detroit as long as I'm at the helm. We'll be
And
here.
you can actually say that now.
Yeah.
Drew, thank you. I mean, we could go on for hours. There's so much to cover, but your journey in itself provides a lot of wisdom, I think, for many people. And once again, I'm just very happy for you that you have the studio, and I think it's in the best of hands for many years to come. And that's going to make for this workplace to be so remarkable, like you've talked about. Your clients are going to appreciate that, which is going to help keep you guys around. And so all the best, and thank you so much for taking this time with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
You're a
I'm
great
grateful
person,
for
great friend.
your friendship and for your time today.
Absolutely.
Thanks.